Hi, in this video I'm going to give you an update on the new pathway to citizenship that's being discussed as a potential new route for BNOs to register as British citizens. Ultimately, it would be renewable periods of 12 months, and it's been discussed in Parliament, and I'm going to just go through the details and explain both the history and the new pathway as it's likely to be. We don't know the details yet. Now, the starting point is, are we talking here about 300,000 people or potentially 3 million? And it's that basic question which actually is certainly came up in discussions in Parliament. But this is just this week, and this is just an extract from the response from Dominic Raab to one question put. He said, "This is why we've said that we will allow 300,000 plus passport holders, along with dependents, to come to the UK in the way I described." And if you look at also Boris Johnson's article this week, it said today about 350,000 of the territory's people hold British national overseas passports, and another 2.5 million would be eligible to apply for them. If China imposes its national security law, the British government will change our immigration rules and will allow any holders of these passports from Hong Kong to come to the UK for a renewable period of 12 months and be given further immigration rights, including the right to work, which could place them on a route to citizenship, which is why I believe in all likelihood it's going to look like this, where you have a number of renewable 12-month periods, but ultimately it would be a 6-year pathway to register as a British citizen, because under Section 4.2 of the British Nationality Act, you would need one clear year before registering, and that's both under the guidance and under the legislation, which I've cited in previous live streams. So just to highlight another couple of points before we go into clarifying things. So this is just to highlight Dominic Raab confirming that dependents would be considered for this status. And then he said the purpose of offering extendable periods of 12 months is that there will be no guillotine that comes down. It allows BNO passport holders to come here. We're removing the 6-month limitation. They can apply to work and study, and that will itself create a pathway to citizenship. I have engaged with the Home Secretary and indeed other ministers, and more consideration is being given to it. So it's still it's still only hypothetical at the moment, but if the Chinese government does go ahead, then this would come into effect. Now, there's one other exchange which I just wanted to highlight for you, and that concerned the example of a student who hadn't got BNO status, and a member of Parliament asked, well, what's their position? Given that they may not be eligible, how would you be protecting them? And let me just see if I can find that for you. Yeah, here it is. Sorry, bear with me a second, please. It's the live stream. So let me just zoom in on this exchange here. So this was the question from Wendy Chamberlain to Dominic Raab. Yesterday, I was contacted by a constituent who is an overseas student at St Andrews University. He did not apply for a BNO passport at the time of the original offer because he was a toddler and his parents did not apply on his behalf. I welcome the Foreign Secretary's statement, but there are many Hong Kong citizens who, like my constituent, did not receive a BNO passport in the first place and missed out. Will he consider the proposal made by my right honourable friend, the member for Orkney and Shetland, to offer a pathway for all Hong Kong citizens? And Dominic Raab said, we need to be realistic about the volume of people that we in this country could credibly and responsibly absorb. which, as I said, is a reason why there was this ambiguity, and certainly what he was talking about was 300,000 rather than 3 million. But this is a person in this example who wouldn't even fall within the 3 million category of people the government says would be eligible. It wouldn't necessarily fall within that. I'll come to the law in a minute. I do not think that we can have this debate without acknowledging that. The fact is, though, that we have a historic sense of responsibilities, as I set out earlier, and we will live up to them. Perhaps the Honourable Lady could get in touch with the Home Secretary regarding that particular case to see what more can be done around eligibility. So that's quite vague, and I think an unsatisfactory response, I would say. Now, just to deal with the background, so I've set it out in this diagram, which is a timeline and chronology. But essentially, individuals who did not, this is just from the YouTube description that I've prepared below, which you can check out below, and also from my blog. Individuals who did not acquire a Chinese nationality and would have been stateless on the 1st of July 97 automatically became British overseas citizens under Article 6.1 of the Hong Kong British Nationality Order 1986. But this generally only applied to those not ethnically Chinese. So this was the part of it that was automatic in 1997. But otherwise, acquisition was not an automatic process. Eligible residents had to have applied for the status before the end of the registration period, and the deadline depended on your date of birth, but the last of these were in 1997. So it was necessary to register within the registration period. So about 3 million people, according to the government, acquired BNO status. Something like 2.5 million non-British dependent territory citizens, almost all Chinese nationals, were ineligible for BNO status. Those ineligible who wished to register as BNOs were required to have been naturalised as Hong Kong connected British dependent territory citizens by 31st of March 96. And then acquiring Hong Kong British dependent territory citizen status other than by birth was no longer possible after that date. So for this individual that's being talked about, the example of the student, when he says what more can be done around eligibility, does that suggest that they might consider extending this beyond the 3 million people to others who are not eligible for the passport because they missed the boat and did not automatically acquire BNO status? That's an important question. And the other question is, who are the balance of the 3 million people? These are people who the government says are eligible for the passport, but once you registered, the passport itself didn't confer status. According to the guidance, it was according to the government, it was issued to people, but of course if it expired, then you would still have BNO status. So in other words, the BNO passport is simply confirmatory of status for those who registered, and as I say, for that narrow class of people who automatically became BNOs. And I was just going to show you the guidance. So this is the guidance issued by the government in July 2017, which stated, I've just highlighted this at the bottom, let me just zoom into this. So it says, as an application to register as a British national overseas was made at the same time as an application for a passport, registration in the UK was done by the Passport Service. Arrangements were also made in the order, which is cited there, to allow governors in the British overseas territories to register people as British nationals overseas. And then it says this, quite importantly, determination of applications. Where an application was approved, the holder will have been issued with a passport describing the holder as a British national overseas. They will not have been issued with a certificate of registration. And then it says this, the bit I've highlighted here. If you need to check whether an individual is a British national overseas, you can contact the BNO team in Her Majesty's Passport Office. So essentially, it appears that the other 3 million or 2.7 million people who are being referred to here by the government must have been people who the government assesses as having been issued a BNO passport, but where that passport must have expired. And in that case, you can apply for a BNO passport. Now, I do understand that many people just allowed their BNO passport to lapse because it essentially was described as no more than a travel document, really, insofar as it just allows you to travel visa-free for the purposes of visiting for up to 6 months. So it wasn't a particularly powerful document. So it may be the reason so many lapsed or seem to have lapsed is because of that. But now that it's taking on this new significance or potential significance, I would add, giving this potential pathway to registering as a British citizen that I've outlined before through renewable 12-month periods. In light of that, then you might want to consider applying for a passport if you have BNO status. Now, if you're not sure whether you have BNO status or you're not sure whether it was issued, perhaps because of your age, you can see here that the application requires that you state your BNO passport number, and it also requires that you produce immigration documents. So what I was going to highlight here is that you can make a subject access request to Her Majesty's Passport Office, and I'm going to be doing this for a couple of clients just to secure further information where the passport has been lost and there's a lack of information. There's insufficient information to actually make the application for a BNO passport. So it may ultimately be that the two, the applications go hand in hand. In other words, when you're making a subject access request for information about BNO status, that's not necessarily doesn't necessarily have to be done through this form. So in theory, you could make the application, the subject access request as part of your application for a passport, but that may lead to administrative difficulties. So given that these are new developments and I'm going to be in the process of requesting information on behalf of clients, then I will keep you updated. If you do want, don't hesitate to on the details below. I have an email address. You can contact me there or touch base with me on WhatsApp. You should take legal advice on your individual circumstances. This video is not advice, but just for information purposes only. And I would be delighted to help you